What's up, YouTube? In the past video, I talked about how software engineers can make, well above six figures. And today I want to talk about why they get paid that much. I mean, what's so hard about their job? They just, type on the keyboards all day long, right? But, let's answer the question. Are they really worth the money? Short answer is yes. They need that ridiculous compensation to get, the new PS5 and, the new iPhone to play all the games. Honest answer is maybe. And I'm going to bring up some points to talk about why things are the way they are and why it makes sense. Um, First thing first, it's the market, and when I say the market, I'm talking about the U.S. job market, just because I live here and I'm quite familiar with it. But I have friends in Japan, Canada, and engineers in here make about 30 to 40% more than those countries. I would say one of the factor that contributes to that trend is the demand for engineers, and the demand is definitely there. You can see this from my LinkedIn message list. Um, these are all recruiters trying to reaching out, just asking like am I looking to switch jobs, looking for new opportunities and that kind of stuff. This is like the only place that I'm this popular. So what's happening here is nothing, too special. As the basics of economy goes, if there's more demand than the supply of a product, then the price of the product, goes up. So, I mean, they're just, more open positions for the engineers than the engineers that who can, fill those positions themselves. So, engineers have the choice of like, picking which companies they want to work for, find, better opportunities and whatnot. So it just, keeps rising the competition up and up. And this demand comes from the fact that there's just so many investors in this country that are willing to dump money into tech companies, right? They're willing to do that because they expect a huge return, like in a 5 to 10 years down the road, um, hoping that their investment turns into like 5 times, 10 times, or even more. They want the companies to become like the next Google or Facebook, and the entrepreneurs also want to become like the next Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos. So yeah, with this kind of trend, the companies are capable and willing to spend more money to find like the the best and the brightest of the engineers to scale their business and make a competitive advantage. And this is what's behind the huge demand and the compensation. So far, I've discussed like how the trend of like the high compensation came to be. But what's so special about software engineers? Like, what makes them so valuable? So for that, let's talk about an example. Let's say you wanted to go to Japan, but you'd only fly if you have the best deal in hand. So what are you gonna do? You of course would look at different airline websites, Delta, Japan Airlines, Singapore Airlines, whatever. And then after an hour, you find a pretty good deal, $500, which is pretty darn good because the average cost is like $1,000, to fly to Japan. So you're happy. So then your dad finds out about this great deal, and then you find out he wanted to go to Germany all this time. So he asks you like find a similar type of deal, and you're so like sure. So you start looking and you looking, and then another friend comes up and says like, "Oh, she wanted to go to a different country too. It's like find her a good deal." Um, so you're like, "Oh, sure," and now you're just like busy, busy. So if you bought airline tickets before, you probably listened to the story. It's like, well, that's dumb. Like, why don't you just use one of those website that does this for you, like an Expedia, Orbitz, Kayak, all those websites. So many of them. But that's exactly it. Those websites were built by software engineers. They automate the searching process by writing software that checks out airline websites for all these different flights, and then they would aggregate all the information to more convenient format for users who are looking for a good deal. So now instead of you spending hours trying to look for the best deal, you just go to this website and it does the work for you. And instead of you providing that specific service to your dad or your friend, now this website can provide that same results much faster to like people around the world. And this is the power of automation and scalability. And of course, this example is like very simplified, but it illustrates the point of the business value. So if you hire like 20 people to do the same thing, pay them like $10 an hour to like search for the best deals. In an hour, you get 20 results, and then you spend like $200. But if you hire 3 engineers for, let's say $60 an hour to automate the process, then this is a completely different story. You're paying like a similar cost, right? $188 per hour, but the process is automated, and you get much more results rather than the 20 results they just got manually from those 20 workers. So engineers are typically hired to automate processes and increase the revenue while reducing cost. So now you're probably thinking, software engineers automate things, and it makes sense for the business, but is the job itself hard? And I would say software engineering jobs could be pretty difficult. Not necessarily difficult in the sense that, you're trying to solve a difficult problem like, curing cancer. I mean, it could be, but that's not the difficulty that I'm talking about. The difficulty I'm talking about comes from the complexity of the tools we have to know and keep up with how they change. And at first, it didn't make sense, right? It didn't make sense to me when I first started, but there are just so many tools involved in how we do our job. And keep in mind, this is for my current position. It's not an exhaustive list by any means. So Python, pip, Flask, JavaScript, NPM, Babel Web, AWS, Lambda, SE3, Jira, Confluence, Google Sheet, Google Docs, Slack, PagerDuty, GitHub, Google Hangout, Zoom, Excel, API integration, Google AdWords, Google AdSense, Pipeline, Sanity Check, Slalom. I feel like I just listed out the entire collection of Pokemon names. Yeah, none of these are like English words. People just came up with these, and that's what we use. But each of them have a very specific and important purpose in the system that we use. And don't get me wrong. I don't need to be an expert in all the things that I just listed. I just need to know like the basics and how they interact with each other. It's write software that makes the business $1,000 per hour, or troubleshoot issues that loses the business $1,000 an hour. And these tools change over time. New tools come into ecosystem and overtake some of the existing tools by popularity, and then we have to learn like the new tool to keep up with the trend, and ensure that we don't become outdated as well. So on top of trying to solve the problems for like the business, we also have to keep learning to become better at the job, or just keep up. So on top of trying to solve problems for the business, we also have to keep learning to become better at the job that we do, or just to keep up. And I think this leads to high pay as well. The amount of self-improvement required is definitely worth the pay. All right, that's it. What did you think? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to click subscribe.